So from turning Gaza into a Riviera, take over the Panama Canal and buying Greenland, Trump making a series of outlandish announcemements since returning to the White House. We're going to talk about that now with our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani, who joins me here on set. Kethevane, the obvious question, I suppose, is what is his strategy here?
Well, that's the question. And really the question is, does he actually mean exactly what he says? Or is this broader strategy behind it? And the question in that is, do you take him seriously or do you take him literally? And I think the answer with Donald Trump is take him seriously, but not necessarily literally word for word. For example, is he going to send troops to take over the Panama Canal? Probably not. Is he going to send troops to Gaza? Probably not. And we've already seen the White House sort of walking back at least that part of the statement. Will he make Canada the 51st state? Probably not. That doesn't mean that there's not something behind that, a little bit lower than just simply taking over those areas that he actually does want. And what you're seeing there is really a new way of doing diplomacy, a new way of making deals. Donald Trump, of course, brands himself as a deal maker, a businessman. He calls it peace through power. Others may call this bully diplomacy. You sort of put pressure on your ally or your rival to obtain something. And that is really what's at stake. It's a sort of power play. It's using your power, the power of the United States of America, to lay out a sort of extreme position. And then in that extreme position, there is the possibility that maybe he's serious, and that's the unpredictability of Donald Trump. But then if you don't do that, there is something that you may gain from it and use it as a bargaining chip. And you see that with, for example, the threats to Canada and Mexico over tariffs. In the end, no tariffs, but Canada and Mexico saying, OK, we'll beef up a little bit our border security, even though they were already doing that in the past with Panama. There was a threat of taking control. They've now said we're going to audit those companies that are owned by Hong Kong-based companies that are operating the ports at each side of the Panama Canal. They also said that Panama is going to pull out of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So he is obtaining some things out of these pressures. When it comes to Gaza, that's the question. Is this to appear like he's the one making the deals, that he's tough? Is it to give Benjamin Netanyahu a political victory? Is it to use as future leverage over the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians? Or is it an actual possible future land grab? Maybe it's a little bit of all of them, but that is the strategy, keeping us guessing about what he actually intends to do.
You've talked a lot there about foreign policy. Is he applying the same kind of theories and strategies to his domestic policy as well?
It's pretty much the same, and the overarching strategy really for Donald Trump is flood the zone. And this is nothing new. It's from Donald Trump's first term, and it was Steve Bannon, the former advisor, who penned that strategy, which is make so many big announcements, so many big moves, the crazier, the better, that the media cannot keep track. The opposition, the Democrats cannot keep track, and even the public cannot really keep track, cannot really make sense of what's happening, cannot dig into what those things individually actually mean. And you see that just with the executive orders. He's had, I think, signed more than 50 by now. He's only been in office just around 2 weeks. That's way more than the past presidents in their first 100 days. So the question is he going to keep up the pace or not? But right now, he's really signed executive orders about everything from removing the DEI policies that discriminate against discrimination, equity, all of that. Recently, this executive order on banning transgender athletes from competing in women's sports, the freezing of the federal aid, at the end of the birthright citizenship. And the question is not whether all of these things are actually going to go through, but there's so many happening at the same time that you're sort of in a whirlwind of announcements. So there's the flood the zone, and then there is the show. Because Donald Trump is a TV person, and he knows that that is what works, and that is especially true of his immigration policy. We've seen those pictures of men in shackles being loaded aboard military planes, the army deploying at the border, the ICE raids in places of work, and even possibly now in schools and in churches. All of that was actually happening under Joe Biden. They just didn't publicize it the way Donald Trump publicized it. And so this is all the show to show his supporters, at least those people who voted for him and who like the policies that they're seeing action. And that is the other side, the key to the Trump strategy.
So that's the strategy. Is it working, though?
Well, look, you could argue that partly it is working because, as I mentioned, with Panama, with Mexico, with Canada, with some of the Central American countries, he has gotten some wins, if you will, whether or not the Mexicans and the Canadians were actually already doing that and they've just expanded it a little bit. That's to be determined by the Mexicans and the Canadians. But he is gaining a little bit out of these negotiations, and he has the leverage because he is the president of the United States. And so he is presenting all of this as victories. He is saying that Mexico and Canada, for example, they backed down because I threatened them and I got something out of it. Panama gave us something. All the other Central American countries gave us something that they weren't giving us before. So in that sense, there is some success. But really going back to the strategy of the show, the success is also what he had in the first term and that he is deploying again this time. He is a salesman. He can sell anything, and he is selling his policies the way Joe Biden and the Democrats were unable to sell. So when I talked about immigration, they did the same things, if not more, because so far, at least the pace of it is not even near what Joe Biden was doing. Yet we, as a collective, we in the United States thought that they weren't doing that and that Donald Trump is coming in and saying, I'm doing it. I'm doing something that wasn't done before. And for his supporters and for the broader public that's not looking into the details of all of that, that is a victory because people believe what they see and they see action. And that is really probably the biggest victory of that strategy. How it turns out in the long term is still to be seen.
Kethevane, thanks very much. Kethevane Gorjestani, International Affairs Editor here on France 24.